terrifying screams of men erupted from the lonely old woman's house on the village outskirts in the middle of the night. Nobody understood what was happening. Neighbors, awakened by deafening dog barking, grabbed rifles and pitchforks, preparing for the worst. What they saw rushing outside froze them in horror. An enormous black shadow was chasing three men who were screaming in panic that a real demon lived in the old woman's house. In a small Siberian village, lost among the endless taiga, an elderly woman lived on the very edge of town. Fate had not been kind to her. All her loved ones had long passed into the next world, leaving her alone with the silence of her country home. No one ever heard her complain. She had grown accustomed to solitude, content with her modest household and small pension. It seemed her life would quietly fade away into oblivion until chance changed everything. On a freezing winter evening, hunters knocked at her door. In Siberian villages, this is commonplace. Tired travelers can always count on lodging and hot tea, paying only with conversation and news from the wider world. But these guests brought something special. Among their catch were three little wolf cubs, left without a mother in the harsh taiga. The hunters took the two larger cubs, but left the third, the weakest and sickly one, on the old woman's porch, departing at dawn. Perhaps they thought the little beast wouldn't survive, or considered it a burden on their further journey. But for the lonely woman, this small bundle of fur became an unexpected gift from fate. The wolf cub was so tiny that the old woman mistook it for an ordinary puppy. Probably village children lost it, she thought, examining the creature trembling from cold. She warmed the little one, gave it milk, and waited to see if an owner would appear. But days passed, no one searched for the puppy, and gradually it became a full-fledged resident of her modest household. Time passed, and the puppy, named Volchok for his habit of howling rather than barking, grew not by the day, but by the hour. The attentive gaze, alert ears, special movement grace, everything revealed the wild animal in him. But the old woman, accustomed to village mongrels, either didn't notice these signs or paid them no mind. For her, Volchok was simply a devoted pet who obeyed her unconditionally, though sometimes displayed his wild nature. Volchok loved hunting neighbors' poultry, but only when his mistress couldn't see. And if caught in mischief, he would comically flatten his ears and crawl to the old woman's feet as if begging forgiveness. This touching behavior always softened the mistress's heart, and she couldn't stay angry with her unusual pet for long. In summer, Volchok lived in the yard, making himself a den under the house's porch, and in winter, the mistress let him inside, where he slept by the stove, warming her lonely nights with his heat. Between the woman and the wild beast formed a special connection, without words, without special commands, but full of mutual trust and affection. Volchok became for her not just a domestic pet, but a true family member, something she never had. One day, troubling news stirred the village. A group of escaped prisoners had been spotted in the surrounding forests. People began locking their doors and not venturing out after sunset. But the old woman, living on the outskirts, either hadn't heard these conversations or paid them no attention. Her protection had always been Volchok, whose sense of smell and hearing detected the slightest danger long before it could arise. One evening, when impenetrable darkness had already gathered outside the windows, someone knocked at the door. The old woman, accustomed to village hospitality, opened without hesitation. On the threshold stood three exhausted men with a feverish gleam in their eyes. They spoke politely, asked for food and warmth, but something in their gaze revealed their true intentions. The naive woman let the strangers in, not suspecting she was opening the door to her own death. The fugitives, once inside, changed instantly. One pulled out a shank and pressed it to the old woman's throat, demanding money and food. They were confident they would quickly do their dark deed and disappear into the taiga, leaving no witnesses. But they failed to account for one thing. The old woman had a protector whom they initially mistook for an ordinary yard dog. Volchok, dozing by the stove, instantly sensed the threat. His reaction was lightning fast and terrifying in its primal fury. In a moment, the domestic pet transformed into a wild predator. The fur on his scruff stood on end, his lips bared long fangs, and from his throat erupted such a guttural growl that even hardened criminals froze in terror. The wolf lunged at the attackers, protecting his mistress. One bandit tried to stab him with a knife but only wounded his paw, which only intensified the beast's rage. Volchok's eyes burned with wild fire, and in that minute, even the old woman realized with amazement that all these years she had lived not with an ordinary dog, but with a true forest predator. The criminals panicked and rushed for the exit, but they couldn't get far. Volchok, despite his wound, pursued them, and his growling roused all the village dogs. The barking was so loud that men ran out of their houses with rifles and pitchforks. The exhausted fugitives couldn't withstand the enraged crowd, and were soon captured and handed over to arriving police officers. After this incident, the old woman became a local celebrity. Many advised giving the wolf to a nature reserve, but she replied, "He is my savior and friend." Volchok recovered from his wound and became more wary of strangers, but showed the same tenderness to his mistress, lying at her feet every evening. The story of the unusual friendship between a lonely woman and a wild wolf spread far beyond the village. It reminded people of the ancient connection between humans and nature, becoming a bright ray of hope and proof that true devotion knows no boundaries.